"Ma'am, step out of the vehicle." The command cut through the humid summer evening like a blade through silk, sharp enough to make nearby pedestrians stop and stare. Red and blue lights flashed across the wet pavement, painting the downtown intersection in restless colors. Drivers slowed. A few people lifted their phones. Others simply watched. At the center of it all stood a black woman in a charcoal business suit, one hand resting calmly on the door of her sedan. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at the officer in front of her as if she were trying to understand how an ordinary drive across town had somehow turned into this. Officer Ryan Carter adjusted the radio on his shoulder and narrowed his eyes. The city around him hummed with Friday night energy. Restaurant patios overflowed with customers. Music drifted from an open rooftop bar. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed through the warm air. Yet all Ryan could focus on was the woman standing beside the dark gray sedan. 20 minutes earlier, a department alert had gone out regarding a stolen luxury SUV seen entering the district. The description wasn't exact, but it was close enough for Ryan. Same color, similar body style, similar location. To him, that was reason enough. "License and registration," he said. The woman handed them over without hesitation. Her movements were controlled, measured, not nervous, not defensive, just calm. That bothered him more than he cared to admit. Most people showed frustration during a stop. Some showed fear. Others became angry. This woman showed neither. The flashing lights reflected across her face as Ryan glanced down at the documents. Naomi Brooks, North Carolina license, temporary city address. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. He looked back at her. "What brings you to town?" Naomi folded her hands in front of her. "Work." Her answer was simple. Ryan waited for more. None came. A faint smirk appeared on the face of Officer Daniel Hughes as he approached from the second patrol vehicle. "That's all we're getting?" Daniel joked. Naomi remained composed. "That's the answer." Around them, the crowd slowly grew. A delivery driver leaned against his van. A couple exiting a steakhouse paused near the sidewalk. The glow from nearby storefront windows shimmered across the rain-slicked street, left behind by an afternoon thunderstorm. Ryan glanced inside Naomi's vehicle. 2 suitcases rested neatly in the back seat. A garment bag hung behind the driver's seat. Everything looked organized. Professional. Still, instinct told him something wasn't right. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the expensive watch she wore with an older sedan. Maybe it was the confidence in her posture. Maybe it was simply the fact that she seemed completely unfazed by the attention. Whatever the reason, Ryan stepped closer. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay here while we verify a few things." Naomi nodded once. "Of course, officer." Her voice carried no anger, no sarcasm, just patience. The city lights reflected in her eyes as she looked past the patrol cars toward the towering glass headquarters of the Metropolitan Police Department several blocks away. The building stood illuminated against the darkening sky, its upper floors glowing gold in the evening haze. For a brief moment, Naomi stared at it quietly. Then she took a slow breath and returned her attention to the officers. None of the people watching knew who she was. None of the officers knew either. And as another wave of flashing lights swept across the street, not a single person standing there realized that by sunrise the woman beside the sedan would be the highest-ranking officer in that very building. Ryan walked back toward his patrol vehicle with Naomi's documents still in his hand, but something about the situation refused to settle in his mind. The radio crackled softly from his shoulder, while the evening air carried the scent of rain-soaked concrete and distant food trucks lining the next block. Behind him, Naomi remained exactly where he had asked her to stay. She did not pace. She did not complain. She simply stood beside the sedan with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years learning that patience often revealed more than arguments ever could. Daniel leaned against the patrol car and glanced toward her. "She is taking this surprisingly well," he said. Ryan shrugged. Maybe. Yet even he knew that was not the whole truth. Most people grew restless after 10 minutes under flashing lights. Naomi seemed untouched by them. Across the street, a large digital billboard shifted from a sports advertisement to a public service announcement about community leadership. The bright screen illuminated the glass towers surrounding downtown, casting moving reflections across the windows. Naomi looked toward the skyline for a moment. The city was new to her, but the feeling was familiar. New cities, New departments. New responsibilities. Over the last 18 years, she had worked her way through some of the toughest assignments in law enforcement. Long nights. Difficult investigations. Endless paperwork. Thousands of decisions that carried consequences for people she would never meet. None of it had come easily. Naomi Brooks was the daughter of a school bus driver and a hospital receptionist from Charlotte, North Carolina. Growing up, she had learned early that respect was not something handed out freely. It was earned one day at a time. Her father used to tell her that character revealed itself when nobody important was watching. She remembered those words now as she stood beneath the flashing lights. Inside her vehicle rested 2 suitcases packed only that morning. One contained clothing. The other contained the pieces of a life being moved hundreds of miles across state lines. Framed photographs. Awards she rarely displayed. A folded letter from her late father that she still carried during every major transition. Tomorrow was supposed to be simple. A meeting with city leadership. A brief introduction. A ceremony. Then the beginning of a new chapter. Instead, she found herself standing on a crowded sidewalk while strangers speculated about her story. A young woman near the crowd whispered something to a friend. An older man shook his head and continued walking. Naomi ignored both. Experience had taught her that assumptions traveled faster than facts. Meanwhile, inside the patrol vehicle, Ryan entered her information into the system. The screen glowed against his face as lines of data slowly appeared. Nothing alarming. No warrants. No criminal history. No concerns. Just an unusually impressive employment record. Ryan frowned and leaned closer. Several law enforcement agencies appeared in her background. Specialized training. Leadership certifications. Commendations. Daniel noticed the change in his expression. "What is it?" he asked. Ryan did not answer immediately. Outside, the city lights shimmered across the windshield like liquid gold. Then he looked up through the glass, toward Naomi, and felt the first small crack appear in the certainty he had been carrying all evening. Ryan stared at the screen longer than necessary. The glow from the dashboard illuminated the tension gathering behind his eyes. He clicked through Naomi's employment history once more, convinced he had overlooked something. People did not usually arrive in a new city carrying credentials like these. Specialized leadership programs. Federal task force experience. Commendations from multiple departments. Training records that stretched back nearly 2 decades. None of it matched the picture he had formed when he first saw her vehicle pull to the curb. Daniel leaned closer through the open patrol car door. "What are you seeing?" Ryan hesitated. "A lot more than I expected." Daniel folded his arms. "Meaning?" Ryan turned the monitor slightly. Daniel's casual expression faded. For several seconds, neither officer spoke. Outside, the crowd continued to shift and grow. The flashing patrol lights reflected off storefront windows and passing vehicles, creating waves of red and blue that rolled across the street like moving water. Naomi remained where she was, standing quietly beside her sedan. Her posture never changed. Her hands rested loosely in front of her. The garment bag hanging inside her vehicle swayed slightly each time a warm breeze moved through the open window. A group of teenagers crossed the street carrying shopping bags. One glanced toward the scene and slowed. Another immediately began recording with a phone. Naomi noticed, but said nothing. Years in public service had taught her that attention often arrived before understanding. Across the intersection, the illuminated police headquarters towered above the surrounding buildings. Its glass exterior reflected the colors of the city. Looking at it now, Naomi felt the weight of tomorrow settling into her chest. She had accepted the promotion 6 weeks earlier after months of discussions with city leadership. The department needed stability. Community trust had declined. Officer retention was falling. Morale was fragile. The mayor wanted change. Naomi had spent her entire career preparing for challenges exactly like this one. What she had not expected was becoming part of a misunderstanding before even walking through the front doors. Back inside the patrol vehicle, Ryan continued scrolling. Then another entry appeared. Leadership Transition Briefing. Executive Appointment Clearance. City Authorization Code. His heartbeat quickened slightly. Daniel noticed immediately. "Ryan, I know. Do you?" Ryan did not answer. The confidence he carried at the beginning of the stop was beginning to erode. Facts were replacing assumptions one line at a time. Yet pride made it difficult to admit it. He stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward Naomi again. The humid evening air felt heavier now. Nearby conversations quieted as people watched him approach. Naomi met his gaze calmly. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. Ryan paused. The question was polite, professional, completely reasonable, yet he found himself struggling to respond. Before he could answer, his radio crackled sharply. A dispatcher called his unit number. Then came the words that made both officers freeze where they stood. "Officer Carter, contact command immediately. Priority level 1. Do not leave the scene." The radio fell silent. Around them, the city seemed to hold its breath. Ryan slowly reached for the microphone clipped to his shoulder, unaware that the next conversation was about to change everything. Ryan pressed the button on his shoulder microphone and tried to keep his voice steady. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. Go ahead." For a moment, only static answered him. The crowd remained gathered along the sidewalk. Headlights rolled past the intersection. Somewhere above, a helicopter crossed the darkening sky, its distant hum blending into the sounds of the city. Then the dispatcher returned. "Officer Carter, command staff has been attempting to reach your unit. Stand by for direct connection." Ryan exchanged a quick glance with Daniel. Neither officer spoke. Naomi watched quietly from beside her sedan. The warm evening breeze stirred a loose strand of hair near her face, but otherwise she remained perfectly composed. Years of leadership had taught her that moments of uncertainty often revealed more about people than moments of confidence ever could. Across the street, the illuminated police headquarters seemed even brighter now. The gold glow from the upper floors reflected against the glass buildings nearby, turning the skyline into a wall of light. Naomi recognized several office windows near the top. Earlier that week, she had participated in planning meetings there through video calls. Tomorrow she was supposed to walk into those offices for the first time in person. Now she found herself standing outside under flashing patrol lights instead. The radio crackled again. This time the voice was different, deeper, more authoritative. "Officer Carter." Ryan immediately straightened. "Yes, sir. This is Deputy Chief Robert Langley." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Daniel looked away toward the crowd, suddenly aware that something serious was unfolding. "Sir." The deputy chief paused. The silence seemed to stretch across the entire intersection. Even nearby conversations appeared to fade into the background. "Officer Carter, I need you to confirm something for me. Are you currently conducting a traffic stop involving Naomi Brooks?" Ryan swallowed. "Yes, sir." Another pause followed, long enough for uncertainty to grow heavier. "Is she present with you right now?" "Yes, sir." Ryan glanced toward Naomi. She met his eyes briefly before looking back toward the skyline. Her calmness somehow made the situation feel even more uncomfortable. "Then listen carefully," Deputy Chief Langley said. "You are to treat Ms. Brooks with the highest level of professional courtesy. Do you understand?" Ryan blinked. "Sir, I do not believe I understand." The deputy chief exhaled slowly. "That much is obvious." Daniel lowered his gaze. The words landed harder than either officer expected. Around them, the crowd continued watching. A city bus rolled through the intersection. Restaurant lights glowed from nearby windows. Life moved normally for everyone else. Yet for Ryan it felt as if time had slowed. "Officer Carter," Langley continued, "Ms. Brooks arrived in this city tonight because she has accepted a leadership appointment approved by the mayor, city council, and department command staff." Ryan felt the blood drain from his face. The sounds around him suddenly seemed distant. "Sir." "Tomorrow morning," Langley said, "Naomi Brooks officially assumes command as police captain for this district." No one moved. Not Ryan. Not Daniel. Not even the people standing nearby. For a brief moment, the flashing lights reflected across stunned faces, glass windows, and rain-dark pavement. Then Ryan slowly turned toward Naomi. She did not smile. She did not look triumphant. She simply stood there with the same quiet dignity she had carried from the beginning, and somehow that made the realization feel even heavier. The words lingered in the air long after the radio transmission ended. Ryan stood motionless beside the patrol car, staring at Naomi as though he were seeing her for the first time. The flashing lights that had seemed so commanding only minutes earlier now felt strangely small against the weight of what he had just learned. Around the intersection, people continued watching, sensing that something important had changed even if they did not yet understand what. Daniel cleared his throat quietly. For once, he had nothing to say. Naomi glanced toward the police headquarters again. The illuminated building stood only a few blocks away, its glass walls reflecting the colors of the city. Tomorrow morning, she would walk through those doors as a leader. Tonight, she was simply a woman standing beneath streetlights, waiting for others to catch up to the truth. Ryan finally lowered the radio from his shoulder. The confidence that had guided every decision he made that evening had disappeared. In its place was something far less comfortable. Reflection. He replayed every moment since the stop began. The assumptions, the certainty, the conclusions he had reached before knowing who Naomi was. What unsettled him most was not that he had been wrong. It was how quickly he had been willing to believe he was right. A cool breeze moved through the street, carrying the scent of rain and distant traffic. The crowd had grown quieter. Even the people recording with their phones seemed more interested in watching than speaking. Ryan took a slow breath and walked toward Naomi. His polished boots clicked softly against the pavement. For a second, he considered explaining himself immediately. Then he stopped. Some moments demanded honesty before explanations. Naomi turned to face him. Her expression remained calm. Not cold, not angry, simply attentive. Ryan noticed that quality now. Throughout the entire encounter, she had never raised her voice, never challenged his authority, never attempted to embarrass him. She had carried herself with the same professionalism she would likely expect from others. Ms. Brooks, he said carefully. The title felt different now, more respectful, more accurate. Captain Brooks, Daniel quietly corrected from behind him. Ryan swallowed. Naomi offered a small nod. Either is fine for tonight, she said. Her voice remained steady and warm. The response surprised him. There was no triumph in it, no satisfaction, only grace. Nearby, a city bus stopped to pick up passengers. Its interior lights glowed against the dark street before it continued on its route. Life moved forward around them. The city did not pause for embarrassment or pride. Ryan looked down briefly before meeting Naomi's eyes again. I should have taken more time before making assumptions. The admission came out slower than he expected. Naomi studied him for a moment. The sounds of the city filled the silence between them. A car horn echoed in the distance. A restaurant door opened and closed. Somewhere above, a flag moved gently in the wind atop the police headquarters. Every officer makes decisions, Naomi said quietly. The important part is what they learn afterward. Ryan listened carefully. Something about her words reminded him why he had joined law enforcement in the first place. Not for authority, not for recognition, but for service. And standing there beneath the city lights, with tomorrow's captain offering wisdom instead of judgment, he realized the lesson had already begun before her first official day on the job. The tension that had gripped the intersection slowly began to dissolve, replaced by something quieter and far more powerful. One by one, people drifted away from the sidewalk. The phones that had been raised moments earlier disappeared back into pockets. Traffic resumed its normal rhythm. The city continued breathing as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. Yet for those standing beneath the flashing lights, everything felt different. Naomi looked up at the night sky. Low clouds moved across the tops of the downtown buildings, reflecting the glow of thousands of office windows. The air carried the lingering freshness of rain, and small beads of moisture shimmered along the hood of her sedan beneath the streetlights. For the first time all evening, she allowed herself a slow exhale. She had spent years navigating difficult situations, but transitions always carried their own weight. New responsibilities, new expectations, new people deciding who you were before learning your name. Across the street, the headquarters building stood silent and bright. Its upper floors seemed almost suspended above the city, floating in a sea of reflected gold and silver light. Naomi remembered standing in front of a different police headquarters 18 years earlier as a rookie officer. She had been younger then, nervous, determined. Her uniform had felt too stiff. Her shoes had pinched her feet. Her father had driven 3 hours just to watch her graduation ceremony. She could still hear his voice. Do not chase titles, Naomi. Chase integrity. Titles eventually follow. The memory warmed her more than the summer air ever could. Nearby, Ryan leaned against the patrol vehicle, watching the crowd disappear. The flashing lights had finally been switched off, leaving only the soft glow of the city around them. Without the lights, the scene looked remarkably ordinary. Just a few people standing beneath street lamps on a Friday night. Yet Ryan felt as though he had lived through an entire year in the span of one evening. Daniel stood quietly beside him. Neither officer seemed eager to speak. Some lessons required silence before words could make sense of them. A gentle breeze moved through the intersection, rustling a nearby American flag mounted above a bank entrance. The fabric shifted softly against the night sky. Naomi noticed it immediately. Leadership was often compared to strength, authority, and command. But standing there now, she was reminded that true leadership looked much closer to responsibility. It meant setting a standard even when nobody expected it. Especially then, her attention shifted toward a young girl standing beside her mother near the corner crosswalk. The child had remained there throughout much of the evening. She could not have been older than 10. Their eyes met briefly. The girl offered a shy smile. Naomi smiled back. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative, just a simple human moment. The girl smiled wider before taking her mother's hand and continuing down the sidewalk. Naomi watched them disappear into the flow of the city. Somewhere above, office lights began turning off floor by floor as employees headed home. The headquarters building remained illuminated against the darkness. Tomorrow morning, it would become her workplace. Tonight, it was simply a reminder of the responsibility waiting ahead. Naomi slipped her father's folded letter from her purse and held it gently for a moment. The paper was worn from years of travel. She did not need to open it. She already knew every word. After a few seconds, she returned it to its place and looked toward the building once more. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and beneath the quiet hum of the evening, a new chapter was already beginning. The night should have ended there, but the city seemed determined to reveal one more truth before dawn arrived. Ryan was preparing to return Naomi's documents when a black sedan turned the corner and rolled slowly toward the intersection. Its headlights swept across the pavement before stopping near the patrol vehicles. The driver's door opened, and a tall man in a dark suit stepped out. Ryan recognized him immediately. City Manager Anthony Keller. Few people in the department ever saw him in person, yet everyone knew his face. Conversations along the sidewalk faded almost instantly. Anthony adjusted his jacket and walked directly toward Naomi. There was no hesitation in his stride. No uncertainty. Only purpose. Naomi offered a polite smile as he approached. "I was beginning to wonder if you would ever make it," she said. Anthony shook his head with a tired laugh. The mayor insisted on one more meeting. Apparently saving a city is easier than ending a committee discussion. Ryan and Daniel exchanged a glance. Neither officer moved. Anthony then extended his hand toward Naomi with unmistakable respect. "Captain Brooks, welcome to the city." The words landed harder than the radio call had. This was no longer information coming through a speaker. It was standing in front of them, undeniable and real. Anthony turned toward Ryan. "Officer Carter." Ryan immediately straightened. "Sir." Anthony's expression remained professional. "I understand there has been some confusion this evening." Ryan felt heat rise in his face. "Yes, sir." Before he could say more, Anthony raised a hand slightly. "What matters now is how we move forward." Naomi remained silent, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. Anthony looked back at her. "The mayor wanted me to personally deliver this." He opened a leather portfolio and removed a sealed envelope bearing the city's official crest. The gold emblem shimmered beneath the streetlights. Several people nearby leaned forward, curious despite themselves. Naomi accepted the envelope carefully. For a moment, she simply held it. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Years of work, years of sacrifice, thousands of ordinary days that had slowly built toward this one. She opened the envelope and unfolded the document inside. The city seal appeared at the top, followed by the formal appointment confirming her leadership position effective at 8 o'clock the following morning. Anthony smiled. "Congratulations, Captain." Naomi looked down at the letter, then toward the headquarters building glowing against the night sky. The reflection of its lights shimmered across the glass towers surrounding downtown. For a brief second, she thought about her father. She wished he could have seen this moment. Ryan watched quietly. The realization settled deeper than embarrassment. He finally understood what had truly happened that evening. He had not simply misjudged a stranger. He had misjudged a leader before taking the time to know her. The lesson was uncomfortable, but it was also necessary. Anthony looked between the officers and Naomi. "The city hired Captain Brooks because she sees potential where others see obstacles," he said. "That is exactly why she is here." The words hung in the warm night air. Naomi folded the appointment letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. Then she looked at the officers standing before her. Tomorrow she would become their captain. But tonight, she had already become something else. She had become the example they needed. The last of the onlookers slowly disappeared into the rhythm of the city, leaving the intersection quieter than it had been all evening. The glow from nearby office towers reflected across the pavement, while a warm breeze carried the distant sounds of traffic through downtown. Anthony Keller exchanged a few final words with Naomi before returning to his vehicle. As the black sedan pulled away, its taillights faded into the stream of headlights moving through the city. For the first time since the stop began, only Naomi, Ryan, and Daniel remained near the patrol cars. Silence settled over the street. Not an uncomfortable silence. A thoughtful one. Ryan stared toward the headquarters building for several moments before finally speaking. "Captain Brooks." Naomi turned toward him. The title sounded different now. Not forced. Not formal. Earned. Ryan took a slow breath. Throughout his career, admitting mistakes had never come easily. Police work rewarded confidence. It demanded decisiveness. Yet standing there beneath the city lights, confidence alone felt inadequate. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "Not because of your position. Because I should have treated you better from the beginning." Naomi studied him carefully. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Daniel shifted his weight and nodded slightly. Even he seemed relieved that the words had finally been spoken aloud. Ryan continued, "I looked at a situation and decided I already understood it. I never gave myself the chance to learn more before forming an opinion." Across the street, the illuminated windows of headquarters shimmered like stars trapped inside glass. Naomi glanced toward them before looking back at Ryan. "Do you know what the hardest part of leadership is?" she asked. Ryan shook his head. "People think it is making decisions," Naomi said. "It is not. The hardest part is being willing to question your own conclusions when new information appears." Ryan listened carefully. The lesson felt personal now. More personal than any training seminar or policy manual could ever be. Naomi folded her hands in front of her. "When I was a young officer, I made mistakes too. More than I like to admit. I once assumed a witness was hiding information because she refused to answer my questions. Later I learned she was hearing impaired and could not understand me." A faint smile touched her face. "That day taught me something important. Most problems become smaller when we choose curiosity over assumptions." Ryan lowered his eyes briefly. The city lights reflected across the hood of the patrol vehicle beside him. "I understand." Naomi nodded. "Good. Then learn from it and move forward." There was no anger in her voice. No desire to embarrass him. Only the calm certainty of someone who understood that growth required room for grace. Daniel finally smiled. "I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be interesting." Naomi laughed softly. The sound seemed to lighten the entire atmosphere. "Tomorrow will be busy," she replied. But busy is not always a bad thing. Ryan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The mistake could not be erased, but perhaps it could become something useful. A lesson. A turning point. As the night air moved gently through the intersection, he realized that the person he had misjudged hours earlier had just demonstrated exactly why the city had chosen her to lead. The next morning arrived wrapped in golden sunlight. The storm clouds from the night before had vanished, leaving a clear blue sky above the city. At exactly 7:45, Naomi Brooks stepped out of her sedan in front of police headquarters. The glass tower rose above her, reflecting the morning sun across polished stone and steel. Employees moved through the entrance carrying coffee cups and briefcases. Some laughed. Some hurried toward elevators. None of them knew how unusual the previous evening had been. Naomi paused for a moment and looked up at the building. The American flag above the entrance moved gently in the breeze. She adjusted her jacket, picked up her portfolio, and walked forward. Inside, the lobby buzzed with quiet energy. Officers greeted one another. Civilian staff checked schedules. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from a small cafe near the entrance. Then conversations began to slow. Heads turned. People recognized her from department announcements and internal emails. Respectful nods followed. Naomi returned each one with a warm smile. Upstairs, the command conference room was already filling with personnel. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Ryan sat near the front of the room. For the first time in years, he felt nervous before a meeting. Daniel sat beside him, occasionally glancing toward the door. At exactly 8 o'clock, The room fell silent. Naomi entered carrying the same calm presence she had shown the night before. She walked to the front of the room and placed her portfolio on the table. No dramatic music played. No grand announcement echoed through the building. Just the soft sound of a folder being set down and the distant hum of the city outside the windows. Naomi looked across the room. Detectives, patrol officers, administrators, veterans, new recruits. Every face represented a different story, a different challenge, a different opportunity. Her gaze briefly met Ryan's. He nodded respectfully. Naomi nodded back. Then she stepped toward the podium. Morning light illuminated the city behind her, creating a halo of gold across the glass. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence felt meaningful rather than empty. It was the kind of silence that appears when people are ready to listen. Naomi rested her hands lightly on the podium. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was steady and confident. "I am honored to serve alongside you." No long speech followed. No lecture. No attempt to impress the room. Just simple words grounded in sincerity. She spoke about service, accountability, trust. She spoke about treating people with dignity even when circumstances were difficult. Most importantly, she spoke about listening before judging. Ryan listened carefully. Every sentence seemed connected to the lesson he had learned only hours earlier. When Naomi finished, the room remained quiet for a few seconds. Not because people were uncertain, because they were reflecting. Outside the windows, sunlight danced across the city skyline. Inside, something new had begun. Naomi stepped away from the podium and looked across the room one final time. Her father's words echoed softly in her memory. "Do not chase titles. Chase integrity." She smiled almost imperceptibly. The title had arrived, but integrity had carried her there. Beyond the glass, the city stretched toward the horizon beneath a bright morning sky. Inside the room, officers sat a little straighter. The flag outside continued moving gently in the wind. And in the peaceful silence that followed, everyone understood the same truth. Real leadership was never about power. It was about character.